The breakneck pace of the Trump administration intensifies with a new high-stakes foreign policy move. China is accusing the White House of launching the largest trade war in history for slapping billions of dollars worth of tariffs on Chinese goods. This as our economy continues to boom. U.S. employers adding a solid 213,000 jobs last month. President Trump explains why he's taking action against Beijing.
I respect China and I respect President Xi, but they've been killing us. $507 billion in trade deficits last year. 507. Who the hell can lose 500? Then you want to do something about it, you get attacked. Oh, that's not nice. That's not free trade. The war was lost on trade many years ago.
Well, Trump is also continuing to go after Democrats by repeating his attacks on Maxine Waters and Elizabeth Warren.
A vote for John Tester is a vote for Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and the new leader of the Democrat Party, Maxine Waters. She is a low IQ individual, Maxine Waters. She's somewhere in the mid-60s, I believe that. Let's say I'm debating Pocahontas, right? I'm going to get one of those little kids. And in the middle of the debate, when she proclaims that she's of Indian heritage, because her mother said she has high cheekbones. That's her only evidence, that her mother said she had high cheekbones.
All right, Jesse.
Yes.
Choose carefully. Commentary on that. You want to go with China, tariffs, Beijing?
I'll start with the DNA situation. A couple weeks ago, we had our little DNA tests, and we all got them done. And I believe I was 99.9% European and 0.1% sub-Saharan African.
Right.
So that would be like if I went into college and claimed I was a minority in order to get a leg up in the admissions process. It's kind of, in a way, what Elizabeth Warren's being accused of doing at Harvard as a professor. I don't know if she has any Native American blood. Her grandmother said she might have had Indian blood. I'm not sure. There's only one way to prove it. I mean, looking at her, she looks about as white as Dana Perino.
I was 100% European.
It was 100% European.
I mean, Dana's the real
and
deal.
She's been talking about that for 2 weeks. But listen, I don't want to question her heritage. There's only one way to prove it. But the Pocahontas nickname really has stuck, and she has not been able to shake this. Same with the low IQ Maxine Waters, and we saw this nickname deal in the primaries with, what was it, Sweaty Marco or Lion Ted, and these things cut hard and they go viral. And it's hard for these people to escape that. I mean, imagine if I switched parties to the Democratic Party, what Trump would call me. Running Waters. Dirty Waters. That's why I would never switch. The name would just shatter my confidence.
So that's why you have to stay.
Yeah, that's one reason to stay.
Right. Okay. All right. So, Marina, what do you make of the situation? I don't know if you want to comment on Jesse's soliloquy there, but
not really.
You want to talk about China and the tariffs?
Sure. Yes, I will talk about China and the tariffs. So, what's interesting is these tariffs, not just with China, but also with Canada, Mexico, and the EU, have the real potential to hurt real voters across the country, whether it's soybean farmers in Indiana who are already starting to feel the consequences of this. So my question for the president is, when he starts to hear from these states, from senators in the Republican Party who are up for re-election or other members of Congress, that the tariffs are hurting the voters back at home, will that change his calculation? Because the president's whole theory of the case is if he puts these really tough tariffs on, these other countries will come and negotiate and make better trade deals, but we haven't seen any evidence they're willing to do so. So the president's playing hardball. We have no new trade deals in place, and meanwhile, there's great economic news, as you mentioned, that has the potential to be undercut in people's paychecks and wallets if the tariffs continue for some time. It's a political question at some point, not just an economic one for the president.
Okay, well, the president, Dana, has been, pretty steadfast on his talking points, about the economy, about the tariffs, that he feels there was unequal bargaining between the United States and China. It's been in place pretty much for, about 40 years, where these have had these discrepancies, where it feels like we have had sort of a disadvantage that we've been operating on, and so he's trying to correct that. What do you think about the timing and the impact on the economy?
Well, I keep thinking that every morning we'll wake up and find out, oh, everything's solved, and there was a big agreement overnight and everything's fine.
Looks like that's not going to happen. The other thing is, there's a piece in the New York Times today that reiterated the president floating that idea at the G7 that why don't we just take all the tariffs off? And Ed Fulner of the Heritage Foundation said, like, we'd be for that. And I'm like, well, actually go with that. Why don't we try that with our allies? He's going to see most of them next week anyway when he goes to the NATO meeting. I do think it has the potential to hurt people. It takes a long time to build market share, especially if you're a farmer, a soybean farmer, or a cattle rancher. It takes a while, and it can be undone pretty quickly. That's why I hope that it gets done. But one of the reasons that we have a trade deficit is that we are a pretty wealthy country, and we like to buy cheap things, and China makes a lot of cheap things that we like to buy. And I think that a little bit of this is turned on its head. The other thing I would say is the president's about to embark on an 11-day foreign trip.
Yes.
He's got a lot of great opportunities, but it's also fraught with a lot of challenges, because my rule is every time a president goes on a foreign trip, something major happens at home. So on Monday night, he'll announce a Supreme Court pick, and then he'll be off and he'll go and he'll let the White House and the Senate try to work on that nomination. And he'll be out of the country. I think that's actually a pretty smart strategy, but then always something else happens at home. Nobody knows what it's going to be.
Okay, so we'll see. We're going to look for that and hear about it first on the Daily Briefing.
Might hear about it at 2 p.m.
2 o'clock for sure. Hello, Tyrus.
Hello, KG.
So nice to have you back again for another day.
Amazing to be here.
Yeah.
Look, we have a saying where I'm from. It's called break bread or play dead. And that's what we're doing with China. We have the high ground. They need us more than we need them. And they've enjoyed a pretty good run of getting the benefit of making a lot of money at our expense. Here's the thing. He knows he's got 4 aces in his hand. China knows he's got 4 aces in his hand. They're going to, and on top of that, the economy is great. And in fact, Wall Street shook it off and just kept going with the new jobs. So there wasn't a big, like, what was it? My dear colleague Richard was like, wait till midnight and those tariffs come in. It's another one of those horror movies that's coming that never actually come.
Richard's 401k went up big today.
Yeah, like it's midnight, it's in trouble. We have time. Our economy's good. Our jobs are good. China has a lot of exports, so they need us. So this was a good move, and let's just be patient and see what happens.
It's not only a trade policy, but it's a national security strategy with China, because when we brought them into the WTO, they abused the system. They dump all these cheap goods into the United States. They manipulate their currency. They don't allow foreign investment. They restrict that very forcefully, and they're building up their Navy big time. So all we're saying is, listen, you know, we need to contain China, and we got to have our allies in order to contain China and protect U.S. workers, because, you know, ever since China got into the WTO, the American blue-collar men and women that work a lot of long hours in this country have gotten hammered. The wages have gone down, and the jobs have left. So Trump came in to protect those people, and one of the ways to do that is to contain the rise of China. They're a big global threat. There's going to be a big clash of the great powers eventually. And I would disagree with Marie. You said that, you know, our allies and the people that we've been, you know, doing these little tariff wars with haven't really done anything. South Korea caved on autos and steel.
We already had a deal with them, though. There's no new deals in place.
They're allowing more imports of U.S. autos into their country, and they dropped the tariffs. No, they're renegotiating current deals right now. France has agreed to pay more for the NATO costs. Germany, Angela Merkel said the other day, didn't get picked up, but she's willing to drop auto tariffs too. And the EU and Japan have now come in and encircled China within the WTO along our side. So I think he is moving the needle on that.
But there are no trade deals that we've seen put into place. He pulled out of TPP. He's threatening to blow up NAFTA. And none of these other countries have stepped up bilaterally and said, we want to do a trade deal with you instead. And look,
like Dana said, I think it's going to take a very long time.
Those average men and women you're talking about, the blue-collar Americans, they're the ones that are most hurt by a lot of these tariffs. People in the Midwest, in places like Indiana and Missouri and Wisconsin.
I'm concerned about, too. There might be some short-term pain. I agree with that.
But is this short-term pain going to get us to a better trade policy in the end of the day?
I think that's the strategy, and we'll see what happens.
But that's a strategy that most economists across the political spectrum don't think will work.
I think most economists said a lot of great things were going to happen with a lot of the other trade deals, and a lot of jobs left the country.
And he's got $200 billion in new tariffs ready to go as well. Dina, do you have another comment?
Not really. I mean, I think a lot of these numbers get thrown around, and it's like with the WTO, the United States wins 89% of the cases that it takes to the WTO.
Yeah.
Can we get to 100% wins? Maybe. I mean, China's not innocent here by a long shot, and especially when it comes to intellectual property theft and technology companies, they absolutely should be called on for that. But I think that the place to do this would be with our allies, with NATO. But again, even that still is like, you know, giving NATO a bloody nose on the way to a better trade deal. I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll all work out. I'm hopeful.
Okay, so Dana is optimistic with her sunny side up. What do you think?
I'm positive. Like I said, I'm patient. I play poker. I got like 2 or 3 apps on my phone. I got no problem sitting down and waiting. It's a
that
poker
is the
game.
key. It's okay,
Break
like
bread
in
to play
baseball.
dead.
I do the patience at the plate. I wait for the full
wait for your
count. I
pitch.
wait for my pitch. I love when it's like 3-2 and the pitcher sweating me, and I'm like, you should sweat me.
And China's sweating.
Yeah, they're sweating.
They're sweating.
They're sweating. All right.